It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, founder of happyfamilies.com.au and dad to 6 daughters. One who has married, moved out and is making me a grandpa in a couple of months' time. Holy smokes. Can't believe those words came out of my mouth. Listen to you, Christine Layton, in the background.
I had my microphone off, but I'm so excited. Every introduction, you give us a little gift. And that is just such good news, Justin. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. In fact, as a dad who said to his daughter, I don't want to be a grandpa until I'm at least 50, but it's up to you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what to do. And I made that very clear. But I just sort of said, I want to be at a point where I can be a present influence in their lives. I want to be the grandpa who, by the time they're 5 years old and heading off to school, I want to be able to meet them at the school gate. I want to be able to ride my bike to school with my grandkids and give the parents a break. I want to be that involved grandparent. And anyway, my daughter didn't wait till I was 50. It's still a couple of years away.
But you will be the kind of grandparent that the parent raves about.
Oh, gee, I hope so.
You will be.
Yeah, we're going to do our best. So anyway, we've got that daughter married and expecting a baby. She's been married for like nearly 4 years now, for crying out loud. That does make me feel like I still feel like I'm like 28, 34, something like that. But our second daughter is in the UK. She's been there for a couple of months now and is just doing such a great job living away from home and living through the coldest temperatures she has ever experienced in her life. It's just been wonderful to hear how she's going over there. Got another kid at uni, and then we've got 3 kids still at school. That's us. Christine Layton is WA and Perth afternoons presenter on ABC Radio. And why don't you tell us about your kids, Christine? Because you've got, I'm going to say you got 2. I mean, technically, not quite, but let's go with that anyway.
Yeah, look, one is technically part of the interview right now. I am expecting a son, which is rather exciting because I already have a 4-year-old daughter. And, look, Bonnie is just a delight. She's got blonde hair and green eyes and a blunt fringe like me, and I didn't mean to give us the same haircut, but I did. And she's kind-hearted and patient, and she's the kind of kid who will see someone crying in the playground and she'll go over and check that they're okay. She won't wrap her arms around them without making sure it's okay first, but she'll certainly look after others. And I think that's because her father is a mental health nurse. So she's very caring. I'm so damn proud of her. And she's cheeky as Justin. I'll tell you what, I didn't realise 4-year-olds could give you sass. You know what she said to me the other morning?
Yeah.
She's got 2 dolls, right, because she knows she's got a little brother coming. She's got JJ from Coco Melon, you know, the 4-year-old's influencer, really. And then she's got another doll, which is called Lisa. And she was holding them both in her arms, feeding them a bottle. And she turns to me and says, "See, Mum, looking after a baby is easy." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Tell me more about that in about 6 months' time, Bonnie.
I love that. And if I was a novelist writing a description of somebody, I would use the term blunt fringe. I think that's just, I love the way you painted that picture with your words. That was just fabulous. So,
it's accurate. Yesterday, we talked about helping your child discover what makes them special. And, you know, who they are depends on who they hang out with. So can I ask you, Justin, what do you do when your child's friend is a bad influence? I mean, this can happen at any age, right?
Yeah, this is a really, really difficult thing for parents to deal with. I remember watching this happen in my family growing up. I'm one of 6 myself. I'm the eldest of 6. I have me, then twin sisters, then my brother, then twin sisters again. And I remember one of my sisters had a friend who will remain nameless even today, 30, 40 years down the track. But she had this friend that my mum despised. She just was convinced that she was a bad influence. She wasn't the kind of kid that my mum wanted my sister hanging around with. And she would consistently pester my sister to stop hanging around with this kid. Now, this story is fascinating to me because a friend and colleague by the name of Christopher Nemec, he's at the University of Rochester, published a really smart academic paper back in 2009 that asked this exact question. So I'm going to lean heavily on Bart Soynens, Martin van Steenkiste, and Christopher Nemec and their 2009 publication that was called, and I quote, "Should Parental Prohibition of Adolescents' Peer Relationships Be Prohibited?" And the idea here is, so in a nutshell, what they've done is we've got really inconsistent associations between parental prohibition of peer relationships and kids going and hanging out with deviant peers, kids that are engaging in challenging behavior. And now this is oriented towards adolescents, but I think it's safe to generalize this into kids who are probably in their tweens. Once we go below that, developmentally, there are probably too many changes, but you don't see too many parents forbidding their 5-year-olds from hanging out. I mean, 5-year-olds tend to be pretty innocent and pretty easy to get along with for the most part. It's once they get up to like 8, 9, 10, and then into the teens. And so what they did was this really, really smart little study, cross-sectional study, which basically means we just look at everything that's happening right now across the population, and they examined parents' styles of prohibition. In other words, in what way are parents saying, don't want you hanging out with those kids?
Oh.
And what they looked at was what's the parent style essentially, and how is that related to what the kids choose to do? Are they hanging out with these deviant peers or not? And they had a hypothesis, and it's worth exploring the hypothesis because it's consistent with something that I'm talking about all the time. In my upcoming book on May 1, The Parenting Revolution, I go into this. In fact, I used this study in the book. So there's what we might call a need supportive or autonomy supportive style, which is essentially saying, you know what, kiddo, I'm going to share some ideas with you. I'm going to listen carefully to you, and we're going to work out an approach here with your friends that's going to work for everyone. Or we might have more of a controlling style. I don't want you to do it. They're bad kids. Stay away. And their hypothesis was essentially if you've got an autonomy supportive style, you're going to see your kids making choices that are safer and healthier. They're going to be less likely to associate with those deviant peers. Whereas if you're a controlling parent, guess what's going to happen? The kids are going to go off and say, I don't care what you say. I'm going to do whatever I want. So they had 234 adolescent Belgians. Average age was like 16 years of age. And what they looked at was what's going on with the parenting style and what are the kids doing. And the research showed that their hypothesis was supported. Specifically, the more that parents opposed their adolescent child's affiliation with those friends, the more they made those friends forbidden fruit.
Yeah.
The more, because those friends were involved in challenging behavior, the more that those kids were hanging out with those friends, the more they were like, I don't care what you say. Whereas the more parents sat down and said, hey, let's talk about this, let's work this out, it didn't completely stop the kids from hanging out with deviant peers, but it reduced the influence of those peers, and it also reduced the likelihood that they were going to spend a lot of time with them.
See, that's clever because as a teenager, when mum said I couldn't hang out with someone or quite simply kept me home, it made me want to go more, and it made me want to defy her and lie to her and go to the Galleria and watch a movie anyway. Because in my mind, I just wanted to sit in a cinema for 3 hours with my friends, probably talking, probably eating a lot of popcorn. I couldn't see the big deal. And so, the more she said no, the more I did it anyway. And I'm not proud of it. I didn't understand her reasoning as to why she was keeping me home. And, in hindsight, my mum was agoraphobic, and I think she had a few things happen, so she was worried about my safety, and fair enough. So I'm determined to get that balance right. But it must be a really hard thing, when you've got a parent who can see from the 50th rung of the ladder as opposed to the 10th rung of the ladder and can see that, a child might be funny and fine in class, but is probably going to do weed behind the shed at school. How do you show your kids what they can't see?
And I guess the other thing is we don't. You mentioned getting the balance right in what you were saying. We don't want to just being supportive of our kids' autonomy and their needs doesn't mean that we say, you hang out with who you hang out with, and that's up to you. Like it's not an abrogation of parental responsibility. It is actually a balance, and that is we sit down and we say, I care about you so much, and I'm seeing some things, and I kind of feel like we need to have a chat about them because I'm nervous, I'm worried. Here's what I'm worried about. So we really do need to have conversations, and that's what these researchers found, Niemiec and Soinens and Van Steenkiste. They found that parents did need to sit down and have these conversations. It's not just go for your life, kids. You figure it out. It's your life. That's not how it works.
So when you have those conversations, I mean, obviously, I think kids are far more aware of what can happen in a worst case scenario. You know, when you're at the cinema, for example, like kids, I feel these days, because of the 24-hour news cycle and social media, they know that they could be abducted, or they know that somebody could put something in their drink, even at a cinema. You know, they know that these people exist. But when you sit down and have that conversation with them, do you use those worst case scenario examples or not?
No. As a general rule, the answer is stay away from the worst case scenarios. Let's go with something a little bit more benign rather than a drink spiking or or an abduction. Because the drink spiking kind of thing, that's more likely to happen once they're
at a club.
Yeah, once they're adults or certainly in their very late teens. And abduction, statistically speaking, the likelihood of that happening is so infinitesimally small. I mean, it still happens, and I don't want to pretend it won't happen. But let's look at the deviant peer
These
thing.
are the examples that my mum used, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so it scared the living daylights out of me. It did make me very much afraid of the world. By the time I left high school and went to uni, I had to recalibrate to discover what was right and wrong, and did a lot of work with the psychologist. But, I mean, obviously just to explain, my mum was the daughter of a prisoner of war from the Burma Railway who had untreated PTSD. So it was intergenerational trauma and anxiety that was passed down through her to me, and I've had to work through it. So how can you explain to your child that bad things can happen without going that far?
Okay, there are two answers to this, and it depends on the age of your child. So if you've got young children, if we look at the history of raising kids, parents from the very beginning have told their kids not to go near the water because the sea monster will swallow them, or not to go into the woods because the bears will eat them, or generally like really scary stories. The Eskimos in particular are known for having, or the Inuit are particularly known for having really scary stories for their kids about the sea and the water. They terrify their little kids. And while I don't love the idea of terrifying kids, what I think is worth highlighting here is that there is wisdom in this, because your little kids will be scared and therefore they will listen. They believe you. But as the kids start to get older and we start to have conversations with them about not hanging out down at the park on Friday night with the friends and getting drunk because the alcohol, you're going to get king hit, or you're going to get someone pregnant, or you're going to get pregnant, or bad things happen. What our kids start to do as they get older is they're like, you know what, I know what everyone's been doing on Friday night for the last couple of months because they've been telling me all about it, and I want to go down, and no one's been king hit and no one's pregnant and everyone's having a really good time, and we've got the video footage to show how much fun they're having. And so if we use these extreme examples, if we use these examples designed to scare kids, we lose credibility in their eyes. We lose influence subsequent to the lack of credibility, and the conversation can go nowhere. They actually stop trusting us because they think that we're trying to stop them having fun. Instead,
that is what happened. Definitely, yes. And Mum and I had to rebuild after that. And you are right. Oh gosh, it's so true. So is it just a matter of being real?
Yeah,
is it just a matter of being real with them?
It kind of is. Let's say I've got a daughter who gets drunk at a party on Saturday night, and when I see her on Sunday morning, I can tell, because I mean, parents, we can tell this stuff. You can tell by looking at a kid whether they've had a big night the night before, and you can usually smell it as well, right? and so if I walk up to my son or my daughter, I mean, I'm speaking hypothetically here, but if I walk up to my kiddo and I can tell that they've had a big night and they've not been honest with me about what's going on, and they've been hanging out with deviant peers, I'm probably going to say, you had a big night last night. I can tell that you've been drinking alcohol. And my child may want to be defensive. And my job as a parent is to say, hey, I'm not going to get you in trouble for it, but I think we should have a chat, because if you think that you're old enough to be doing this, and if you are going to do it in spite of my request that you not do it until you're at least 18, I need to make sure that you're safe, and I need to make sure that you're healthy. And then this is so hard for so many parents to do, but to sit down with that child and say, how did it feel when you got drunk? Or how did it feel when you had that intimate moment with that person? What was it like for you? What was good? What was bad? How can we help you to make safe, healthy decisions around this behavior moving forward? Now, this, especially for a family or a parent who where this clashes with their values, it's almost impossible to do because you're going, hang on, you're stomping all over everything that I hold dear. You're pushing back against the things that I've taught you. I feel like you're betraying my trust. Inside, as a parent, you are in such a tough situation. But if you unload all of that on them, you will lose them.
Yeah.
What you need to do instead is say, all right, when you're with these friends, what are you noticing? How does it feel to be around them? Do you feel like you're honored? Do you feel like you're being pressured? Do you feel like they listen to you? Do you feel like you have a voice? And so what we're trying to do is work out, how does it feel? Where should we go from here? And how can we support you? And how can we turn this into a healthy, safe environment for you? Those conversations are what we call autonomy supportive conversations. And those are the conversations that will lead kids into much better, safer, healthier decision-making processes and systems.
Yeah. So, Justin, can I go to the movies after this?
Well,
no, that's
let's
really
have a talk,
good advice.
Christine. Who are you going with, and what are you going to be seeing? Let's make sure that you're making safe, healthy decisions. Do you know what? Like that's the conversation. I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, I just want to go on my own at this point. I just want to sit there and eat popcorn by myself, said the very pregnant mother. And I'm sure that those of you out there listening understand.
Yeah.
Another great session, Justin. This has been so much fun, honestly. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me this week. It's been a real delight. I hope that our Happy Families listeners have enjoyed our conversations. It'd be great to do it again sometime. In the meantime, I look forward to joining you again soon. For our Perth listeners, you can hear us every second Monday afternoon at about, help me with the time. What is it, like 10 past
Good point.
10 past
Local
2?
time, 2:05
Okay.
for Happy Families.
And we talk about all the good stuff like we've talked just now about these things. Christine, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me on, Justin. See you, everyone.
And the Happy Families podcast will be back next week with Kylie again, because school holidays, I think, are over in Queensland. I hope I've got my dates right. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. And for more information about making your family happier, you'll find it at happyfamilies.com.au. Have a great weekend.